Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Richard Graves. Thought I'd talk to you all a little bit. Um, Obviously, in light of what we got going on in our country. As you all know, we have this trial going on for Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd. And Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis, is already uptight. I guess the whole country is actually uptight about how the outcome of that's going to be. A lot of people don't expect Mr. Chauvin to be convicted. And honestly, unfortunately, it's one of those things that could possibly happen. But anyway, besides that, what you got going on in Minneapolis right now? They had another police involved shooting. I heard there were a couple other ones across the country. And, you know, this is not a public policy discussion I'm about to have with you guys. It's a personal one. Normally, I try to have a analytical, academic, logical, and rational discussion with you all about what I foresee happening or how people should respond or what the law says in this situation or that one. But I think we've gone beyond that. I don't think that people are too particularly invested in an actual public policy solution for what's going on. I think that, as they say in the entertainment business, we reached a jump the shark moment. So this is what I think is going to happen. I don't like being the harbinger of doom or saying stuff that is not what people want to hear. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think the collision between the Black Lives and the Blue Lives Matter movements is full steam. Now, the reason I say Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter is not specifically the organizations or the movements themselves, but the fact that these movements have been made to be a proxy for two different extremes that both want nothing but chaos. And unfortunately, with law enforcement continually making these bad decisions that we see ended up with somebody being dead. And it isn't even if they're in the right or if they're not, that's the point anymore. The point is that now you created a situation where Black people, particularly Black men, are truly terrified of interactions with law enforcement. And unfortunately, on the other flip side, I think that law enforcement has gotten to a heightened sense of anxiety and fear when dealing with Black people. And law enforcement being the professionals, being the ones supposed to be paid, you would think that maybe they'd start training for that or doing for that. But again, the public policy discussion is lost. I think the two biggest mistakes that happened was the formation of Black Lives Matter as an organization and a movement, and with Blue Lives Matter being made the counter movement to that. Blue Lives Matter has become the proxy of all things white nationalism, all things white supremacist. That's a nice way to say that you don't like Black people just by saying Blue Lives Matter. And unfortunately, Black Lives Matter has always been, in my opinion, something that wasn't too particularly vested in actually dealing with the issues, the underlying issues that have created these outcomes between Black males and law enforcement. But it has had its own other agenda, pushing forward a different narrative and a different agenda than the one that we're looking at as far as dealing with the problem. Instead of the Black community or law enforcement sitting down with the Black community or Black community sitting down with law enforcement, this has not happened. The Black community has continually talked at law enforcement. Law enforcement's talked at the Black community. Nobody sat down and had a talk about how to fix things. And honestly, I think there are people vested in this chaos, vested in Black people not talking to the police, vested in the police not talking to Black people, and everybody going along acting like they're each other's enemy. And I think that we're heading to a point now of no return if we haven't already hit that point. I talked with my friend Grumpy, who was a former white supremacist. We talked about this during some rioting earlier last year and protesting and rioting. And we talked about the fact that there are people vested in bringing this to a confrontation is not going to end good for anybody. What I fear is going to happen is the fear that some people, or African Americans, particularly African American males, in areas where police are having these issues, are going to feel a fear where they're going to feel justified in responding with nothing but violence because they're going to feel, and I should say I'm Black, but the people are going to start feeling like that If they comply, they're going to die. If they don't comply, they're going to die. And I don't think anybody's taking that fear seriously. And unfortunately, law enforcement is heightened in its tensions, dealing with being thrown under the bus all the time by administrations and chiefs and deputy chiefs, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a bad situation, man. You know, Tomorrow I'm going to have my friend David Rogers on. We're going to talk about it in more detail, talk about maybe some of the things we can do, some of the organizations and activists who actually really care, talk about what we can do to try to, not meet this particular situation. But I see collision coming. And I don't know if we've like I said, I don't know if we passed the point of no return. I mean, you already have all this tension up in Minnesota and across the country. Now you have all these other shootings, and honestly, it doesn't matter if the police are right or wrong. It's just the fact that in many of these cases, these are things that didn't have to end the way that they did, and here we are. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that nothing good is. Like I said, we've gone past the discussion of public policy, and now we're having, this is going to be an us versus them situation. I don't think anybody wants to see. So that being said, I'm keeping the country in my prayers, and hopefully we don't have to have a large degree of violence before we actually have a change in policy that we should have had 20, 30 years ago. So here we have it. Like I said, I'm not trying to prophesize doom, but I am trying to say that things are getting way out of hand. Emotions are getting way high. And, you got people who have abject fear of law enforcement. I've talked to African Americans across the country, and they say with a straight face and in all seriousness, they're scared of the police. I've talked to former black police officers who say they're scared of the police. I mean, I don't think law enforcement wants that. They shouldn't want that. And I think it's time for the leadership in these law enforcement organizations to reach out and talk to the community, because it's going to be dangerous for police officers. And I'm not wishing any evil or harm on anybody, black, white, badge, no badge. No, I'm simply saying that if people truly begin to fear the police the way that this is going, it's not going to be a good situation for a person. And I don't want any police officer to get killed on the street because someone is afraid of the police, because of how this is all looking. This is looking bad. I don't think most police officers, obviously, I know, aren't hunting down African American males, but unfortunately, because of how the media has been pushing this and the realities of the things that happen, and officers like Van Dyke getting off with light sentences or no sentences, people are going to start feeling like, what is my option? If I comply, I die. If I don't comply, I die. And yeah, those of you out there who aren't black, or some of you who are, might even be saying, well, that's an irrational thought. Of course, it's an irrational thought, but that's how irrationality works. It works off fear. Fear is an emotion. A person is fearful based on what they're seeing, the outcomes they're seeing. So that fear is going to create some situations going forward. So that's what we need to think about. Do we want to cut this off at the pass, or do we want to see this keep going? So speaking to the law enforcement community, the leadership in law enforcement community needs to start talking to the black community. Or, like I said, when words end, then actions start, and actions aren't rational. A lot of the time, it's going to be a bad situation. That's all I have to say about that. Just wanted to touch base real quick. I'll talk about this in further detail with Mr. Rogers tomorrow. No, Mr. Rogers, David Rogers tomorrow. A friend of mine, former Chicago police officer. We're going to talk about this. I might have a couple other officers that I know on, and maybe some former officers I know, and some lawyers to talk about what's going on. But man, this is just looking bad. Nobody wants to see, a population in fear of the police that are supposed to be protecting them. Nobody wants to see that. But as more of these things happen, this is where we're at. And it's truly concerning. I know yesterday, Lauren and I on the other show, we went over a video of that Army veteran who got sprayed with the mace, and he had said that he was afraid. Now, at first I was like, man, this dude wasn't afraid. But you know what? Honestly speaking, I don't even know anymore. Especially when I talk to younger black men, they are literally afraid of the police. This is not a situation that the police should want, that the public should want. We shouldn't want that as a nation, but this is where we're at. With the Army officer, update is that one of the officers, the one that I was talking about, that's being unprofessional, got fired. I believe it was for his conduct, not necessarily the use of force, but the conduct itself. Because he escalated the situation, he could de-escalate it. I said that both people in that situation, both the Army lieutenant and the cop, escalated the situation. However, only one of them was getting paid in that situation, and that was the cop. So if you take a job, you got to get out your feelings. You got to know how to do your job professionally. With that being said, you guys have a good night. I'll be on tomorrow with Mr. David Rogers, and we'll talk more. God bless and peace.